Hey, man, how's it going?
Hello, Kenny. What's up? How are
Hey,
you?
man, can you hear me quite well?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Awesome. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience, Shivam?
Yes. Just a moment. Let me adjust my camera so that I look good.
Of course.
Yeah.
You
So,
always look good.
yeah. So, thank you so much for inviting me. Hi, everyone. I am Shivam. I have been a vegan activist for 5 years. And this page, Voice of Vegans, is something which is managed by me. I'm an educational activist. I take college lectures. I do street activism where I talk to people. And of course, I put out a lot of content online, Instagram being one of them. My website, it's called voiceofvegans.com. And then we have a YouTube channel. And we recently started a podcast called Ethical Leaders, where we are talking to people who are doing amazing stuff. And the idea is to get inspiration from them to grow in life ethically. So that's the introduction. And I see certain folks saying namaste, namaste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gemini says Shivam is a rock star. Hell yeah.
You, would you like to guess who Gemini is? Like, you'll be shocked to know who Gemini is. Gemini is a very good friend of mine. And there's one video on our page which has hit 7 million, wherein I'm speaking, and the above half of the video, there's a lady inside the cage. That person is Gemini.
Oh,
So she's a
sick.
So she herself is a she herself is a rock star organizer. So organizes amazing event in this beautiful city called Goa. And please follow the Goa ALM page. That is the Goa Animal Liberation March, which takes place every year in December. So yeah, amazing event.
Awesome. You'll be happy to know before you joined, I've seen a lot of people from India dropping in comments. So
Yeah,
yeah, man.
yeah.
Let's get going with the Q&A. Starting off with a spicy one. Why don't plants feel pain when they're cut, Siobhan?
Well, we don't have that answer why they don't feel pain. We just know that there is no conclusive evidence that they do feel pain. So there's no and beyond that we can only speculate. So we don't have that answer why they don't feel pain, and why a stone doesn't feel pain, why my iPhone doesn't feel pain. So we can speculate that there is no nervous system and no pain receptors. So we can say that, but there can be an advanced methodology of perceiving pain, but we don't have conclusive evidence for that. But guess what? We know that humans and most animals are sentient beings who feel pain. So that is important to know.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you, what do you say in an outreach scenario if someone pulls out the plants feel pain card?
Well, my first question to them would be like, I'll just ask a very heart to heart, honest question that do you genuinely believe that eating an apple or plucking a fruit from the tree is equivalent to slitting the neck of a goat? Like a very genuine question I'll ask them just to gauge how honest they are. If they are honest, then they will like be something like this. Yeah, I know, I understand there is some difference, but like they'll go in that tangent, right? A little bit of defensive. But if someone says point blank, no, it's the same thing, then I'll get into the scientific side of things later. Then if you are saying they do feel pain, then that's a positive claim that you are making. And if you are making a positive claim that they do feel pain, then you have to back that with evidence. So please provide a scientific peer-reviewed research paper which states conclusively that plants feel pain. So since there isn't any which has come so far, so that's where the discussion should end. But if I want to give them a little bit of concession depending on their attitude, I'll say, okay, let's assume that you are a genuine plant sympathizer. Then let's get into the utility calculus of it, right? How much plants are consumed on a plant-based diet versus a animal flesh diet, right? So over there also, like, more plants are consumed, but I don't get into that more often than not. Like, my first question is like, do you genuinely believe they feel pain or not? Because I'm like, that's a very heart to heart question. I'll ask them with all emotion, like, and I'll give them that scenario, like imagine this slitting the neck of a hen. Do you think that is same as plucking an apple? That's the first question. Second question is, if they say yes, that is same. Like if they say it with a lot of conviction, then it's a positive claim that you are making. Please provide research paper to back up the claim. And if I am in the mood and if I find their attitude respectful, then I'll get into that tangent. Okay, even if you believe so, less plants are consumed on a plant-based diet. So there you go. So there is like no.
This is, it's like, I wish that for the audience's sake, I wish I could say that people haven't turned round to Shivam and said, yeah, it's the same thing, but people have done that, and I've seen that in your videos.
Yeah. I know. They do that, and those are the ones which kind of they do well on social media because people say such ridiculous stuff. In fact, you won't believe this. I had a 30 minutes conversation with someone on street on plants feel pain. They were like not budging from their position that plants do not feel pain or they do not have evidence. They were like providing silly articles and YouTube videos of random content creators that they are saying that plants feel pain and all of that. And after 35 minutes of discussion, and I knew that that was like gold content because of the ridiculous stuff that they said. They came back to me and then they said, hey, we are not giving you consent to publish this. And I was like, dude, like, then you should have not said such ridiculous stuff, right? So even though I published a part of it with their face blurred, I modulated their voice just to hide their identity. But yeah, that has happened with me.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question. It literally just says odd order predator culling. And so I'm assuming that what they're asking is our opinion on it. Do you have an opinion on it?
No. I have read on the ethics of killing an odd order predator. Like it's about threshold deontologies, where it comes like you kill few of them to save like a lot. It's like a version of utilitarianism, but at a certain threshold, right? I haven't formed an opinion on that yet. And the reason why I have not spent too much time forming an opinion on that so far is because as of now, I feel that it doesn't have practical application in my activism. But someday that is a question probably which once we reach a vegan world where we realize that all humans have, majority of humans have gone vegan, then probably that is a very relevant question to address and people need to come together and think about it, like what can be done.
Yeah. Personally, like, I understand the thought process as well. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that it's a matter for veganism specifically. I potentially believe it to be a separate matter.
Yeah, of course.
And
I mean,
yeah,
that depends on like where are we understanding what is the definition of veganism. If we are looking at veganism as rejecting the commodity status of animals, then probably it's not relevant. But if we are going one step ahead and trying to do something miraculous to reduce the overall suffering that is specifically happening in the wildlife, then that conversation probably becomes relevant. But I think while it is good to theorize about it sometimes, but the practical application of it will come like way in the future probably.
Yeah. This one, I'll need to keep it here just now because it's a long one. Should we not support non-vegan restaurants with vegan options? Because the profit margins go to factory farming. The non-vegan restaurant isn't a necessary establishment for a plant-based future. So yeah, a simplified version of that question, like, should we support non-vegan establishments with vegan options?
Yeah. So that is a tricky one actually. Now, and that depends on a lot of factors. So for example, if there is a vegan option, that is of course the ideal situation to be in. But if there is a non-vegan option, non-vegan restaurant, and I do not have a vegan option, probably I'll go and consume food there, vegan options there. But again, that depends on the nature of the non-vegan restaurant. For example, if that place is a big brand like the KC with something in between, I'm not naming because in India, it's very common for activists to get legal notices. In fact, or if it's the big dairy brand like the one in India, I will avoid that because for me, that is the symbol of um, mass scale animal cruelty. They are the facilitators of mass scale animal cruelty. So even if like a vegan product is a small, very small segment of them, I will probably avoid that because it is less logical but more symbolic for me that that particular brand or establishment is a facilitator of mass scale cruelty. So probably I'll avoid that. But if it's a small startup or a small restaurant and I do not have an option, then probably I'll find that. So the first option is to find the like completely vegan option that supports the ethical vegan businesses as well. Second option is if there is a mid or small scale non-vegan restaurant which is offering vegan options, that is the better option. And avoid the large scale ones, you know, the obvious ones which I'm talking about, unless like they have opened a completely vegan joint or something of that sort, and that is purely symbolic. Uh, uh, the message is symbolic, but do not starve yourself. Like, don't go to that extreme that, okay, you are at a situation of starving and then also not doing that. No, we want vegans to eat well so that they have the energy to talk to folks about veganism. What is your opinion?
Yeah,
Like, would you prefer having, let's take the extreme example because that is the one I think is something that needs to be addressed. Like, what is your personal opinion on that, Kenny? Like, would you be
yeah.
comfortable consuming plant-based option from one of these big animal flesh restaurants?
So my perspective on it is this: like, I was going to expand it. I know the question specifically says restaurants, but I was going to like expand it out a little bit. Um, the reality is that we live in obviously a predominantly non-vegan world, and the reality is that 9 times out of 10, so where I'm from, I'm not, I don't think there's any vegan establishments. There isn't any vegan establishments. So the only option I have is to buy vegan options from non-vegan establishments. Like, this is the only option that I have 9 times out of 10. And so my perspective, and it's the same thing with like supermarkets and stores. You can obviously consider them to be non-vegan businesses, and so the reality is that we have to support non-vegan businesses. Practically, we have to. But I would agree with you that, so say you have the option where you can get a burger from one of the really famous fast food chains, and right next door there's an all vegan joint that you can get a burger from. I think naturally you would be drawn to that and you would want to go there. But I would agree that that would be the right choice. It's just that for most people that choice isn't there. For me, that choice isn't there the vast majority of the time.
Yes, and that's a very good point. And I just realized my privilege in this conversation that I'm from India. So for me, like, we have vegetarian restaurants very easily available where we can always go and veganize stuff, which is not very difficult, right? And I just realized that that is a privilege, me being in India, because our food predominantly is very close to a plant-based diet. So for me, I think maybe I'm spoiled for choices, so I'm thinking in that way, right? So totally get your point. But in your case, because you are in a situation where you just do not have any establishments like that, then your options are limited as compared to someone in India.
Yeah, precisely. And like I said, I think that your opinion's totally valid, and I think we probably are somewhat obligated to support the all vegan place if that option is there, for sure. What's your opinion on the animals that are used in the army and the police? That's a good question.
It's a good question, very good question actually. But ultimately, the ethical and the ideal answer is I do not support that, because again, they are treated as someone who's there for a very specific purpose, and they are treated as commodities in there as well. But that being said, there can be like exceptional cases where they are treated well and there can be cases where they are treated as part of the troop, like they are part of the, like they are treated as army men and women, like that. It can happen, but that is something to be assessed. But at a broad idea that, because these dogs are specifically bred for that kind of a breed which is fit in that specific area, right? So again, we are trying to modify someone's behavior, and we are trying to breed them for a certain purpose, which again falls into that overall umbrella of animal being seen for human use, right?
Yeah.
And plus, I mean, let's be practical here. In 2024, I do not think that that is like the smartest way to use animals. Like that is the smartest way to uh, detect anything, right? We can rely on technology. We don't have to use animals for this, right? It's probably an archaic method which is not being changed. Why? Because no one has questioned that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You pretty much like, it's pretty much the perfect response. I was literally just gonna say, I feel like, yeah, from an ignorant perspective, I don't know anything about it, but from an ignorant perspective, I feel like effort should be made to replace the animal use and exploitation for something like technology, like you said. That would be the option that I would support.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was going to say, like, I understand that like dogs are great at things. So like, if effectively they're part of this like greater good, and they can achieve things that like people can't achieve on their own. But like you said, yeah, there must be ways to use technology to achieve the same results.
And they are a specific, I'm not sure about this, but I believe they are a specific breed. So in India, for example, the breeding industry is very cruel. I'm not sure how the situation is in the West. In India, we have stray dogs who are indie dogs, and people will not adopt them, but instead they would go to breeders to get a specific breed. And army dogs are also like a specific breed who has like heightened sense of smell, I believe. And that is
yeah,
again, at the basic level, it is an exploitation. And I think we should challenge our intellect to move beyond that and come
yeah,
up with better technology where we are not reliant on any animal for that purpose.
yeah, for sure, man. Shivam, which is better, which is better, vegetarian or vegan?
Yeah. So I think I'm judging by the name Vedant. So it's a question from someone who's Indian, and in India there is this debate on which is better. So first and foremost, I would,
All right.
if we would have been in a conversation, Vedant, I would have asked you, what do you mean by better? Like ethically or health wise, or what is the premise? So let's just look at the two aspects. Ethically, I think if you are vegetarian for ethical reasons, that is animal ethics, then if you are honest to yourself, eventually you will become vegan. In my opinion, after interacting with a lot of ethical vegetarians in India, I've realized that the difference between an ethical vegetarian and a vegan is that of knowledge, because people do not understand the animal use and abuse in some of these industries like dairy and bees, honeys and silk and all of these. And once they get that knowledge, they become vegan. So if someone is vegetarian for animal ethics, they will eventually become vegan. So that is one thing. And secondly, on the health aspect, I think now we have enough evidence, and more importantly, anecdotal evidence as well. Like you'll find so many Indians who are so healthy, because your bio says arm wrestler. So I'm assuming that you're worried about the consumption of protein and all of this. I think we have so many examples, so many Indians who are amazing with their fitness levels in different sports, and they are doing so well, right? So I mean, you just need to get in touch with them, just need to replace, essentially you just need to replace milk, and it can be done easily. You just need to be conscious about it. That's it, right? So so to summarize, on the ethics of things, I think veganism is what it's the moral baseline, as simple as that, because veganism is rejecting the commodity status of animals. But because I'm in India and I know a lot of folks who are ethical vegetarians and who have turned vegan, and hence I'm giving this extra disclaimer that if you are ethical vegetarian for animals, then probably it's just a matter of knowledge. If you are from India, please watch The Land of Ahimsa or Maa Ka Doodh on YouTube. You will learn about the dairy industry in detail. If you do not have the attention span, then go to my page. There is a reel which is for 1 minute 30 seconds. Watch that. That summarizes the dairy industry.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll just very quickly say, so you've explained well that, yeah, like obviously we would advocate that vegan's better, and I'll just assume that you're not sure why that is, and really quickly just explain that in vegetarianism, like although you're consuming secretions and not obviously dead animals, the misconception is that there's no cruelty involved, but on basically every level there still is. There's the breeding process, and we can never really decide whether an animal's born male or female. And in the business of animal secretions, males are useless. So most males are killed in eggs and dairy very, very, very young. And then there's the matter of like when the animal that's being exploited for the secretion, so the female, the mother, when they become like less productive, they're usually killed as well. So that's why vegans are against it, and that's just a really quick summary.
Yeah. And just a follow-up pointer on that, again, because this is a misconception which a lot of Indians have, including myself. I had this misconception as well, that whatever Kenny said, I used to think that is not happening in India. That is only happening in West, because in India we have religious sentiments associated with cows, and we have this feeling that cows are treated very well like our mothers. But when I got into the nitty-gritties of the dairy industry, did a lot of research, visited dairy farms, talked to dairy farmers, talked to vet doctors, realized that it is every bit as cruel. Only thing that is different between India and the western part of the world is the process. Over there, like, you have large scale dairy farms. In India, still we have like small scale dairy farmers. But if you see the nuances there, everything else what Kenny said is applicable, that they are subjected to forced pregnancy every year, and then the male calves are discarded. And India happens to be one of the biggest beef exporters in the world. And even though there is some protection for the indigenous cows, political protection, so they have a legal protection because of the religious sentiment. But please note that the maximum milk that is used in India is not coming from the indigenous cows. It is coming from buffaloes and hybrid cows. And there is no legal protection. So they are definitely killed. And hence the dairy industry, beef industry, leather industry, it's one single supply chain. They subsidize each other. So you just need to know that if you're consuming milk, then you are contributing, of course, to the cruelty in the dairy industry, but also you are indirectly participating in the beef industry and the leather industry as well.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thanks for adding that. This question says, I am vegan too, but I can't refuse my parents and relatives. What can I do? I think maybe just lost in translation. I think they just mean that they are having trouble like convincing their parents and relatives to like join them in veganism.
Yeah. So that is a relevant question, that if you're having trouble convincing them to go vegan, then that is understandable. But if it means that you are having trouble refusing eating non-vegan products when they offer you, then you're not a vegan yet, probably. So that is understandable, Ranveer, and I keep saying this, that especially in India, more often than not, our parents and relatives who are older to us, they do not take us seriously. And that is there with almost everyone. It's very difficult to have a conversation with your parents. It's very draining to have a conversation with your relatives. My humblest suggestion to you is that you do not be the change agent for them. Instead, you ask someone else to do activism with them or forward them videos of other creators, but you don't get into that zone of doing activism with them. If you have tried already and it's not working out, that's okay. You focus on other neutral folks who are ready to listen to you. You don't have to invest too much of your time and energy into convincing your parents. It's a very common problem in India, Ranbir. I think most vegans and vegan activists I come across, like, this is one of the most common sadness of most vegans in India is that our parents are not vegans or our relatives, our brothers and sisters are not vegan. So can't help it. Let others take care of that. Let us not be the change agents when it comes to our parents. The reason I'm saying is because your energy and your time is valuable. Invest it on people who are open-minded with regard to your conversation and activism.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, my apologies. I think I understand the question now. Just misunderstood what you meant, but so you can't refuse like non-vegan food that's offered to you. I feel like this sort of
So that is
depends on. Sorry, Shivam?
no, that is my assumption that that could be a question, that if you can't refuse food to you to your if you can't refuse non-vegan food when your parents and relatives offer. I'm just assuming maybe that is the question, or maybe it is the
Yeah.
active. Ranbir, if you can clarify that. If that is the question, then probably we'll take it up again.
Yeah, I think that might be what they mean, and if that is what you mean, I think it's like I can almost understand if based on two things, either you're very young, so you're a young person and your parents are in control. In that scenario, I would just say like, obviously, I'm really sorry they don't take you seriously, but just wait until you're older. But if it's not that, and it's just that they're cooking for you, but you're not a child or a young person. I would just say like what Shivam said really early on. We know that the conversation's difficult and we know that it's awkward and horrible, and we've all been there and we've all had to deal with it. I would say to just sit them down and tell them that something you're very serious about, and just say that you'll cook for yourself. Like they don't need to cook for you anymore. Like maybe it's time for you to, if you're not a great cook, like learn how to cook and cook for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we semi-covered it. Can we drink milk of cow or not? So yeah, I would say definitely not. No matter how ethically exploited you think the animal might be, reason why, from my perspective, is that viewing animals as resources is wrong. We don't need cow's milk. Cow's milk is for baby cows. If we're drinking the cow's milk, what's happening to the baby cow? And if it is one of these scenarios where it's like, I know that it's quite popular in India where families have like one cow or whatever, you have to like expand this idea out broadly to the entire, like, you have to think of it as a solution for everyone. So if you're presenting a solution that's like ethical cow's milk, all you have to do to realize that it's not so ethical is expand it outwards to the entire population. Then you've got issues of having to breed cows into existence in large, insanely large numbers, which is never going to involve anything but cruelty. All male cows don't produce milk, so what do we do with the males? We can't just raise every single male that's born because we have to feed them. Just viewing animals as resources is wrong because it leads to exactly all of the problems that vegans are against.
True. And I think, Mahesh, I believe your question is essentially that if we can drink milk of cow or not. And probably you're trying to ask that if we are raising them nicely and then can we consume it or not. And it's, some people talk about it in India, it's called ethical milk. I will make a detailed video about this whole concept of ethical milk, essentially what Kenny touched about, and just going to highlight that how it is not ethical. It's not possible for it to be ethical in any condition. I've done a lot of calculation, thought process, and gone into it to understand it's just not possible. And if you want to really take care of cow, then just take care of them as companion animals. That's it. Do not, like, why do you have to make it a transactional relationship where you are taking care of the cow because you want milk from them? Just take care of the cow like how people have companion animals as dogs and cats, right?
Yeah, perfect. Just really quick to this guy, what does your t-shirt say and where can I buy it if you're speaking to me? It's a vegan FTA t-shirt. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize I had part of my lunch on my t-shirt today. It's a vegan FTA t-shirt, and you actually can buy one through the link in our bio from the vegan FTA Instagram link in our bio. You actually can buy one. I'm not sure if they were maybe speaking to you though, Shivam.
No, I'm wearing a solid black t-shirt, so they can't be asking me.
Fair enough. Okay, how to deal with friends or family that don't try to change.
I think, yeah, I answered that, Japjot. First and foremost, know that you are not the only person in India who's a vegan and who's facing this problem from their family. It's a very common problem. It's the most common problem amongst all vegans. We are always sad about this. So please note that. And like I said, you do not engage with your parents and family members because I know it drains a lot of energy from you. You can try it once or twice, but if it's not resulting into a fruitful discussion, then you don't be the change agent. As simple as that. Let someone else be the activist who talks to them. You forward them videos of other content creators. You just don't engage. Once again, emphasizing on this, that your energy and time as a vegan activist is very valuable. Use it wisely.
It's amazing advice, Dad. I'm vegetarian, but one of my office colleagues and I had an argument regarding that medicine is non-veg.
Mm.
Do you know anything about this, Shivam?
Yes. So first and foremost, Mansi, my humblest request to you is watch Maka Doodh on YouTube, or The Land of Ahimsa on YouTube, or one of the pinned videos on my page. Please watch that. That's just 1.5 minutes, because you are a vegetarian, you're asking this question, and I'm sure that you care about animals, you're compassionate about them. So please learn about the dairy industry as well. That's one thing. Second thing is, with regard to medicines, I think nowadays there are a lot of alternatives for a lot of medicines where we get plant-based options as well. And if that option is available, please choose that. If that option is not available, then unfortunately, we do not have an option today. Then we have to, like, if you are in dire need, then probably you'll have to consume that, right? And there is nothing wrong with it. If you do so and someone calls you a hypocrite, then you can counter them that it's not hypocrisy because you did not have the plant-based option. That is one. Secondly, you are trying to change that animal testing in medicines be stopped. And another thing with medicines is that it is one of those industries where the power in the hand of consumer is limited. For example, if all consumers come together and stop consuming burgers, then we'll see the shift in demand to a plant-based burger. But when it comes to medicine, our power as consumers is limited because animal testing is done at a very early stage. And in my opinion, protests will be more helpful in these industries, pressure campaigns, than refraining from or trying to change an impact from the demand side of things. But of course, we should search for medicines which are plant-based. But if it's not there, there's no harm in consuming medicines which are unfortunately coming from animal cruelty at this stage, constraint of living in a non-vegan world. but that doesn't make you a hypocrite. So be clear on that. You have any different opinion on that, Kenny?
No, perfect response. Literally just just remember, like my focus is on the concern, because you stated that it was an argument with a colleague. It's the concern that you're just being criticised and expected to be perfect. And just, if you ever have the conversation again, just remind that person that veganism isn't about perfection. It's about doing everything that you can. And Shivam answered perfectly. This question says, is what you eat enough to fill your stomach? Yes, very much so. Yeah, we all did gun shows. You put me to shame. So yeah, whole grains, beans, legumes, veggies, loads of fibre. Yeah, very much so. My stomach is always very full. What about you, Shivam?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very simple thing. It doesn't matter what spectrum of health or health lifestyle you follow, whether you are whether you are ultimate fit person, or whether you are absolutely unhealthy junk food eater. It doesn't matter. You'll find a lot of vegan options. You'll be full, your stomach will be full, so don't worry, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of non-vegans don't realise that how important fibre is and the role that it plays in making you feel full as well. And yeah, so vegans typically do better there. Very often non-vegans say that the people who harvested your tea also suffered. Is this so this sounds, this is like a human exploitation thing, I think. What can you say in response to that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Shiva.
So, I mean, essentially this is a very broad, it's a crystallized argument. The broad argument is that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. I think that is, if you drill down various examples of it, this is one of them. That the complex world that we live in, how the global supply chain works, there can be human related cruelty in whatever we are consuming. However, that is not, while I accept that there can be cruelty in products which we use today, I'm not denying that. But the important question is that a justifier to abuse animals like hens and goats and cows and buffaloes? And the answer to that is no. But if someone tells me with certainty that wearing this t-shirt right now or drinking a tea is definitely causing cruelty or rights violation of someone, where there is no, like, if I stop wearing the t-shirt or I stop drinking the tea, then the life of the human will increase, the quality of life will increase, then I'll stop doing that. But no one can tell it with certainty, right? No, if you tell us with certainty, with conclusive evidence that, okay, if you stop consuming X, then it will lead to better quality of life for a person Y, or it will eliminate the rights violation of the person Y, then we'll take that option, right? But it is just a speculation that you have come up with, which I understand. We should be mindful of our consumption. We should look for ways where we should try to minimize consumption. We should look for ways where we are trying to optimize sustainability and all of that, but that is a separate topic. That topic has nothing to do with direct rights violation when we demand for animal flesh, animal secretion, and these animals are subjected to horrific conditions. So that is the important point to note, that it's not a justifier.
Yeah, I was like tempted to say that if you know for certain that the problem with all of this is that it fully depends on what you know. The difference with animal products is you just know for an absolute fact that an animal either suffered or was killed for it. With the human stuff, you're either speculating or someone told you, like, for a fact this brand exploits humans. And I was tempted, and often I'm tempted to say, if you know this for a fact, to boycott the product. But then I've also been told, I've also had people bring to light the argument that if you do that, what's the conclusive like proof or evidence that that benefits the person who you're trying to the person that you're concerned with, because it could leave them in a worse position if you boycott one of the only industries that they have. And the issues of their life being, the complex issues of why their life is so difficult, complicated, and they live in a scenario of poverty isn't necessarily exclusively and conclusively the tea in this scenario, and there's greater issues at play. What do you think of that, Shivam?
Yeah, that's what I said, that if someone can tell me with conclusive evidence that if I stop wearing this t-shirt or stop drinking the tea, then the life of the person, the quality of life of the person improves, either that, or if that person is suffering from certain rights violation, and that is eliminated. But that evidence is not there. So you're essentially saying the same thing. So if someone tells us with certainty that the quality of the life of the person will increase, then we will not wear that t-shirt or not drink that tea or coffee, right? But no one can say it with certainty. So it is very important to actually gauge the seriousness of the question that the person has asked. Sometimes people ask this genuinely, and I think it's enough to tell them that, okay, I understand that there can be issues. We don't know for certain, but that's not a justifier for abusing these animals. But if it's an anti-vegan and they are making this claim, then we get into the point that you are referring to, that, okay, in that case, please prove to me with evidence that it is actually going to improve the quality of life of the person involved in that supply chain.
Exactly. So, yeah, there's a lot more grey areas when it comes to the human exploitation, and that's really unfortunate. Okay, how can I keep my pets healthy and reduce their impact on the planet as they need meat? First and foremost, I'd be more concerned with their impact on other animals, and if that impact can be mitigated, then we should do what we can to mitigate that. Here's the thing. So I can only speak for, like, I have Thanos like lying down here next to me, who's a dog, fairly large dog, like just under 30 kilograms, on a plant-based diet for 3 years. Yeah, for basically the entire time that I've been vegan, and he thrives. I don't know. You've said pets. I would obviously, as a vegan, prefer the term companion animals, and hopefully, you're an advocate for adopt, don't shop as well. But I'm not sure which animals you mean. But under the always a veterinary approved brand for certain, and if you're concerned, under the supervision of a veterinary, I would suggest trying them veterinary approved brands of plant-based quote unquote pet food. If the animal you're speaking about is an animal that can consume that, I would 100% do that, because it's hypocritical to me to think that their life is more valuable than other animals.
Yeah, I think you covered it right. The biggest problem with companion animals eating flesh is that it is resulting into abuse of other animals. So that is the point that Kenny rightly talked about. Then if the companion animal is a dog, I think we have a definite plant-based solution. At least in India, I've seen so many dog parents who are raising their dogs on a plant-based diet. Cats is the solution has come for cats as well, but it is not as mainstream or widespread as for it is dogs. Like in India, some brands are upcoming, and there are some homemade solutions as well, like how to go about it. In fact, I talked about the podcast series that I'm doing right now, Ethical Leaders. Next month, one of my guests is a specialist on this topic, who has founded plant-based brand in India for cats and dogs, and we are going to discuss this issue in great detail. So you can,
Awesome.
yeah, you can check the ethical. It's called Ethical Leaders. You would find it on Spotify and Audible, and also on YouTube.
Awesome, dude. Shivam, I wanted to ask, do you still have time to answer a couple questions?
Yeah, please. I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Awesome. And just before I answer this one, someone asked, what country do you belong to? I belong to Scotland. I'm from Scotland. Shivam, you're from India?
Yes.
There you go. So, I am always told cruelty is mostly in everything, which is similar to what Shivam covered with
Yes.
the exploitation under capitalism point. What should I say to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, as Shivam said before, it's like it's not an excuse to do everything and anything that you specifically know has a victim on the other end of it, especially a victim who absolutely, like, necessarily must be killed for you to have the product that you're talking about. It's just because there's a lot of cruelty in the world doesn't justify. We'll just use the easy example of eating animals, and I think Shivam's already covered this perfectly. So I don't expect you to say it again, Shivam.
Yeah. Just a pointer. Just would request. Just read up on difference between reduction in cruelty and rights violation.
Oh.
So you'll get a clarity on that. In fact, the video that released today, I have talked about on YouTube. I have talked about it. What's the difference between reduction in cruelty and rights violation? That will give you a lot of clarity in tackling such questions.
Perfect. Yeah, I learned from David C. Arenas. Yeah. I learned from him the idea that, well, what you're explaining is part of like a utilitarian like calculus.
Yes.
Veganism isn't overly concerned with that. Veganism just simply refuses or rejects the idea that animals are here for us and that we should exploit them. And so, yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure how to say it. Could you read this question, Shivam?
Yeah. So, hi Sahil, I read your question. I live in Haryana and it's a state in India which is heavily dependent on dairy. I think the whole northern belt, and for that matter, the whole country is dependent on dairy, especially from the economic side of things. India is, I think, one of the, or probably the biggest dairy producer in the world. And yes, that is going to be a challenge from the economic side of things. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you look at it, the change is not going to happen overnight. So it's not like the economy is collapsing overnight. It's a slow process. So fortunately, from the economic side of things, unfortunately, from the animal side of things, that it's not happening overnight. So that is one thing. And secondly, if that happens, I think India has reached that level where we can handle a tectonic shift in an industry. I think India is doing very well on the economic front. It is growing. And I think we are prepared to make ethical choices without hurting the economy of the country. It's going to be a process, but I think we can reach there. Ultimately, we have to think about it that just because an industry is generating money doesn't mean that we have to support it if it's unethical, right?
Yeah.
Think this way, right? The recreational drugs industry is a huge industry, right? Black market organ harvesting industry is a huge industry, but we do not support that. Why? Because we see the victims for what they are, that is victims. But when it comes to dairy industry, we ignore the victims and just focus on the benefits that we are getting. And I think that is what we are trying to change predominantly, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. And that kind of goes well into what I wanted to say to the answer to this question. Tell me some tips to avoid non-veg. I want to say something a little bit different. I want to say, because I'm sure Shivam will have plenty to say, but focus on the why and not the how, right? Not only and specifically, but just remind yourself of the why. The tips are not as important, and you will, if you're a fully grown, capable adult, you will figure all of that stuff out without. I mean, I didn't know any other vegans very well when I went vegan at all. I was pretty much alone in the whole thing. The why is so much more important, and that yeah, that's just kind of what I have to say.
Yeah, I have a 4-step solution, and Likhita, I would want you to write it down. Kenny, if you want, you can also write it down. 4 steps, very important.
Okay. Yeah.
From the victim's perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
That's it. And Likhita, we have very big vegan community growing in India. If you want, you can. So Kenny rightly said there's the why side of things, which I summarize, think from the victim's perspective. The how side of things, like how to get protein and how to replace this and how to replace that and how to do this and that. For that, the best solution is to be a part of the community. And we have a very big growing vegan community in India. Join a WhatsApp group of transitioning vegans, and you will find people who are like-minded, who come from similar background, and who have probably done what you want to do. So they will definitely help you out and expedite your process.
Perfect. Yeah. And finally, before we move on, you can click on our page, Vegan FTA. You can click the link in our bio, and then you can click free help going vegan. And there's tons of resources there for absolutely free. Okay. This is one for you, Shivam, for sure.
We're going to read. So Sahil, yeah, I understand that ghee in North India, it's like ghee is essentially, Kenny, for your reference, it's like Indian version of butter, which is essentially used in everything from lentils to chapatis to rice. Like people will pour ghee on everything, especially in, I think, based on Sahil's earlier question, I think he's referring to Punjab and Haryana, that side. So it's very common. Totally understandable that ghee is unavoidable, but then, I mean, you have to take that stance. If you are a grown-up, tell it to your relatives. I think it's going to be a bit awkward for the first couple of times, but if you take your stance, take a firm stance, then it will be sorted. So just to give you context and some motivation, Sahil, I'm from a Bengali family, and you would know that the culture of consuming non-veg in Bengalis is very high. And we chose the most important day in our life to tell all our relatives, and that was the most awkward moment in our life. But ever since, no one has bothered us. We put our foot down, telling them that our marriage has to be completely vegan. If you want to come, you come. You don't want to come, please don't come. But this is how it is. It was an awkward moment, but once you take that firm stance, then everything else will be sorted. So be very assertive about why you are vegan, right? Just tell them point blank, hey, I can't consume ghee because I see that it is a result of cruelty. I see that those animals are subjected to so much of abuse. I'm sorry, I can't participate in that. That's it.
Yeah, perfect. This question, I used to have one response to, but I've changed my response recently. So, should we even argue or debate with ignorant people? Is it worth it to try to educate them? And so before I would have just said no, but now, based on some things, I think it depends on like whether it's like an option to spend your time on them or someone else, right? Like, because maybe you'll notice a lot with like people that do outreach when they're speaking to like a group of people, if they're like focusing on this one individual here and they're just being really, as you say, like really ignorant. But there's this person here who's like, you can tell it gets it a bit more, then yes, like worth focusing on like the other person who clearly is like more receptive. But then I've also seen, so say you're in a scenario where it's just like, yeah, your time couldn't be better spent. Um, Cliff Grant, if we don't know the activist from Ireland, he said something in a video recently where he explained that you never know, even based on like what that person's demeanor is like in that moment, you never know like what impact you're having on them. Just because like they like act a certain way doesn't mean that they don't actually deep down they um that they aren't actually understanding what you're saying. And there was the story that he was explaining was that he was outreaching a farmer, and in his mind he was like, I'll never get through to this person. But then this person like messaged Cliff Grant months later saying like that they quit working on the dairy farm and everything. And that you never know how well you can outreach someone despite what your misconceptions of them as a person actually is. What do you think, Shivam?
Yeah. So a couple of quick points on that. First and foremost, do not get into the discussion with a preconceived notion about the other person. You think of them that they are open. Just go ahead with that. Being ignorant is okay if like in the sense that they are not aware of things, like they are genuinely ignorant. Then it is our job to take away the ignorance from them by telling them, giving them information about these industries and how they operate, and make them see the connection between what's on their plate and the source of it, right? That being said, sometimes if the person is going on the anti-vegan tangent, then it is your call whether you want to engage in that or not. And the reason for that is it totally depends on you as an individual, what your temperament and patience level is on how you deal with these people. If you feel that it is draining your energy, then like Kenny said earlier, if you have someone else, please move on to that person, right? As simple as that. That doesn't mean that an anti-vegan person can't go vegan. I'm not saying that. I'm just asking you to introspect that is your time best spent on engaging in discussion with them. If you think you feel good talking to them and debating them and like getting into a heated discussion and then eventually ensuring that they see what you want to say, if that happens, or sometimes if that doesn't happen, then if you're fine with the repercussions of wasting 30 minutes and it did not result in something, it's perfectly fine. If you have that temperament, please go ahead and do that. There are some people who specialize in that, and we need those people, right? But if you think that it is draining your energy and then you feel that you are getting burnt out, then you have to be mindful of your audience, where your patience level is most optimized. So that's that.
Yeah, awesome. My final look through the questions told me that we've sort of covered everything in one way or another that people are asking. So I suppose I'll say, like, thanks for coming on and doing a live with me, Shivam. And to everybody who's watching, I'll repost this live just now, and if you'd like to follow along with Shivam, you'll find his social media handle in the repost, and you can follow along. And do you have anything you want to say before we head off?
No, it was a great session. Some really good questions. We should do this more often, because I believe that this gives us an opportunity to conduct such discussions with people. Some genuine questions do come in, and it also forces us to think in different tangents sometimes, because sometimes a question comes we have not thought of in the past, and then we should again reflect on it and probably craft our answers better for future conversations. It was really a great conversation. I was hoping for more trawlers, but I didn't see many, so that is also good.
Oh, there was one or two, but I just ignored them.
Yeah, there were few in the beginning, but yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah, it was really great speaking to you, and I second what Shivam said. There were some amazing questions today. I really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, man.
It's really late now, so now I'll go off to
Oh
sleep.
yeah, of course.
But it's
Have a good night's sleep then.
thank you
Thanks, dude.
for joining, and thank you, Kenny, so much for hosting this event. And until we meet again, the Shivam out. Namaste.
So welcome, man. Right, peace. Have a good one.